back to our work on the logon screen. Turns out that the logon screen actually has to do quite a bit in our application. So let's F12, and here's our logon code, and this is the logon window, which is the very first window displayed when the application starts. So today we're going to create what's called a macro, and a macro allows you to create a sequence of instructions that, when the macro is referenced, get generated by the compiler at compile time. And this specific macro that we're going to create has to do with making this application cross-platform. Now, in Windows, when you enter a path and file name, you use the / key to separate the directories and the file names. And when you're in Unix, Linux, you're on that platform, you use the / to separate paths and file names. So we're going to want to have the ability to compile this under either Windows or Linux and have it automatically use the correct file separator character. So in order to do this, we can come up to just below the very first compiler directive here, just above interface, and we can add, first of all, we have to tell the compiler that we want to use macros. So we do that by entering a curly brace, then a $. That says this is a compiler directive, and then we say macro on, and then close it. Now macros are going to be observed and used at compile time. Now we're going to enter a conditional compiler directive, which says, we always got to put the curly brace and $sign in, and then we can say if the operating system, OS, is equal to Windows, then we're going to do something. So close that, and what follows is what will happen. So I'm going to indent, and I'm going to say, and I'm going to give another compiler directive. So I'm going to say define file separator, file sep is equal to, now this is for Windows, so we use the \, right? And that's that one. And now the only other thing it could be, in our case, is Unix Linux. So we would just use an else statement, else, and then we have the define for for Linux. So what we put in is define file, helps if I can type, file sep is equal to, and it's a /. Okay. And then we have to have the end if to terminate this. So we now put in $end if. Okay? And you don't need the spaces I'm putting in here. All right. Now let's make sure that what we've just entered here, let's save it. Control S. And now let's press Control F9, which will do the compile. And we got some messages down here. It looks like it compiled okay. Let's read the messages at the bottom. Oh, illegal compiler switch. Okay, I can't put these spaces in. I thought I could, but I can't. All right. I think that fixes it. Let's give it another spin. Control F9. Okay. It's happy with that. Very good. Now, the way we wrote this was we just hard-coded John Smith and password in. We're going to have to change that. We're going to now going to say, when this window first pops up and the code executes, that's called a form create event, and it only happens once. When, if you look back here in the main source code, this create event only happens once. So if we want to do something that happens on the first execution and display of that window, we do it on the creation event. All right? So let's go back here. We'll save what we've changed just so far. So I have to bring up that form again. I shouldn't have closed it. I have to focus on this form. We are. The object inspector is showing I'm focused on this form. And now I need to go to events, and I need to find on create. And it's right here on this line. It says on create. And I'll double click on that line. And now Lazarus has generated the procedure for when the form is created. And it's waiting for me to enter some code. So, what we need to do is we need to look for a file that tells me the path to where all the data files are for this application. Now, if you're writing an application that's just going to run on the local machine and in the currently logged into directory, you don't need to do this. But if your application is going to run on multiple machines and they are all accessing a common set of files, let's say on a server, then you will have to do this. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to create a file that contains at least the computer name and the path to the files on that computer that you want to access. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look for that file which hasn't been created yet. So we're going to create a file name that is on the local machine. Oops, gotta make this a constant. I'll have to explain this in a bit. Excuse me. We're going to call this just file name. It's a local string variable called file name. Whoa, that went way out there, didn't it? Don't need to be that far out. Let's move this back a little bit here. How about there? And this is a string, and it's an empty string, has nothing in it. Now you have to use const, the compiler directive const, to describe file name to have an initial value that's set at compile time. If I made that, if I changed const to var, that won't work. Then I can't set it to an empty string. You see what I mean? Okay. Now we are going to have a variable, and it's a file type. So we're going to have a variable, and this is going to be my app file path. That's a long one, but it describes what we have. And this is a text, it's a type file of text. It's type text. Okay? All right. Now, we're searching for this file name. What is the file name? Well, we're going to have to create the file name. File name is equal to, and it's going to be equal to the current directory that we're in. How do we know what current directory we're in? Well, there's a utility that you can call, a function that returns a string, and it's called get current dir for directory. When that gets executed, that will get replaced with the text, the path, the entire path up to where you are, from where your application is executing, or whatever directory you set before you executed the application. That entire string will go right there. Now here is where our file sep comes in handy. File sep. That's going to put the correct forward or backslash in depending on what operating system we're running on. Now you see the value in that, right? Okay. And then we're going to have a hard-coded file name, which is going to be my application file path dot dat. Okay. Right? So now we've created the file name. This is, we're going to look for this file and see what our path is to where our data files are. So the next thing I ask is, well, does this file even exist? So I can say if file exists, and then give it the file I'm looking for, file name, then we're going to do a block of statements, okay? What file exists does, it returns either true or false. If the file name that I've given it exists, then file exists will return true. If it does not, it's going to return false, all right? So this says if that's true, then do this. Now in Pascal, you have to give it the name of the file that you're going to open, and you do this with the assign file function, where it's actually a procedure, and it's going to return the handle. They call it a file handle. In other words, the thing you're going to reference, it's, in this case, it's a text file, a file of type text, and then we're referencing it as this file name. Okay? So we're going to assign the file. Now, in order to open it, to open an existing file, you use reset. So I say reset, and I say the file handle that was returned, my app file path, all right? Let's make this go just a little faster. Control C and Control V. Okay. So now that would open it if it exists. Now we're going to say if what? If we're not at the end of file, in other words, if that isn't an empty file, I'm going to cheat again. Oops, I cheated too soon. Okay. So if we're not at the end of the file, then that means we've got data. So at that point, we're going to read a line from this file into that app file path. Oh, okay. App file path. That's where the data is going to go from that file, the string. It'll read a string. It's text. And then after we read that, we're going to strip any white characters off of it. So if it contained a space or something at the beginning, if it had a carriage return or line feed at the end, we're going to trim that off. And you do that by saying app file path, set that equal to trim, and the same thing, app file path. Now what trim does, it trims both sides, front and the back. Trim left would trim just the left-hand side, and then trim right would just trim the right-hand side. Okay? And at this point, we can close this file that we created because we've gotten what we want. Right? So we would just close my app file path. Okay? And that's it. Is that right? That looks right. To put the end. By the way, if you notice when I put my cursor on end and I click it, it puts a little faint red box around it, and it also puts a faint red box around the matching begin of that block. That can be very handy when you're debugging. And I also like to line up the end of the block with the if that started it. It's just a thing of mine. Because if you print a long listing out and you're looking for the beginning and the ending of the block, you can just put a ruler on right in front of the I on if, and wherever the end matches that, that's the end of the block. Makes it very simple. All right. So, where is I was referencing app file path. I gotta fix that. Little space. Okay, app file path is going to be I think it's global. I think it's global. Let's see if it is. Right now it's not. I think it needs to be. I'm sure it needs to be. No, maybe not. Is it only used in this unit? Okay, it's the current, okay, it's current directory. No, it's not. I know I'm flip-flopping, guys. I think app file path needs to be global. It needs to be available to everything. So let's make it public on this form. Okay, let's do that. You see, this form has private and a public. I think in here we can just do var app file path string. Okay, so every unit that references unit logon, the form will include this public variable, which is the application file path. I think that will work. Well, let's compile it and see. Oh, what's this say down here? Expected equals, but got this. Where is that? Oh, is that true? Is that true? I guess it is. I guess that's true. Well, we'll change it. Maybe if it'll make it happy, let's make it happy. Okay, let's do a Control F9 and just see if this compiles clean. And we got wrong number of parameters specified for the close. Really? Okay. Oh, it's supposed to be close file. That's why. Close is to close like a form or something. We've got to say file. Oops. It's okay, but I'm trying to keep it. Okay. Control S to save it and Control F9. Okay, we got a green bar down here. That means things are good. All right. All right. Now let's go back up to where we're logging on. So, if we have no file path established for this application, that would indicate that we can't access the user ID database, because the user ID database is going to be stored with this on the server where all the data files are also stored. Now, if we were writing a local application that would just run on this machine, we wouldn't need to do this. But I'm trying to write this as a realistic application, so it's going to have to be able to access files on a server somewhere. So we're back to app file path. So if the result of the form create event determined that there is no app file path, in other words, it's set to an empty string, that means there can't be a user ID file. So here we would say if app file path is equal to an empty string, or, so it could be set, but it's possible that no user ID file has been created there. So now we need to next check for that. And then we would say not, so or not file exists, and then give it our file name, which is going to be app file path plus file sep plus then the hard-coded name we're going to give to this file. And in this case, it's just going to be users.dat. Okay. Okay. So then that's going to begin a block of code. So yeah, helps when you learn how to spell or type on the keyboard. All right, so the next step is we're going to validate the user without the existence of the user.dat file. You could here just blow up, but that wouldn't be a good idea. When this application is executed, it's been installed and it's executed for the very first time, there won't be any of these files. So it's still expecting a logon to be that's successful to get you to the next step. So the way you do that is, when no user data file is currently defined, or there isn't even a path to it, you go with a hard-coded initial user ID and password, which is we're going to take the code that we wrote for letting John Smith in, and we're going to modify it. The user ID is going to be back, and door is Larry. Door is the password. Okay. Okay. And now, when you log in, it would be nice for your other units in the application to know who logged in. And if they have some kind of access code which gives them access to the various facilities of this application. So let's add some more public variables. And we're going to call them user ID, and that's a string, yes. And username. I think that would be okay. Yeah, I think that'll be okay. All right. So these are going to be publicly available, and we'll see how that works in just a minute. So down here, let's say so we're going to have user ID, and we're hard coding this. User ID is admin, and the username is going to be set to administrator. But these aren't, okay, we're going to call it badmin and it's backdoor. We'll put a B in front to show that it's the backdoor guy. Okay. And then we're still going to do this stuff with the panels, right? We're still going to do that stuff. And then we're going to let them move on to, yeah, that works. Okay, back and then door. Set the user ID and name. Clear the caption bar on this window, in the login window. Erase the text in the user ID entry box and the password entry box. Make the logon window invisible, and then show the My Application form. And that's what will happen. Otherwise, and this is the else associated with this if. This is what gets executed if there is an application file path this else isn't going to work right though. So we could have an application file that's empty. No, we can't get there. So if we have an application file that is satisfied, it has some a path in it, we could still have an empty and non-existent user data file. So what are we going to do in that case? So we got another else if going on here that we have to take care of. Or do we? I see what I should have done here. What I should have done here was I should have done a then begin. Okay. And then I should have in here said if not exists this, then begin. Okay. So let's mark all this and do a tab. Yeah. What if I hit tab again? Yeah, that's better. Okay. So now it says, if the file path doesn't exist, then begin. If no user data file exists, then do this. And so that end has a colon after it because that's the end of it. But now we have the end of that if up there, and I didn't actually need to do that. I already have the end down here that matches that. And so now we're at the point where we do have a user data file. And I think what we're going to do is, so this is just an else. All right. And here's where comments start coming in handy. You know, if I comment this, it will help a lot. And comments are important. So we would say if there is no file path to the data files. Okay, that's what this says. End. And now the next comment would say if there is no users file test for the back door user ID and password. Okay. Okay. All right. So, and that's the end of that block, right? Okay, and now we have the else condition. Okay. If there is a users.dat file, then validate with it. All right. So right now, I'm just going to have logon failed. That's what I'm going to do. Because we're going to have to develop the code. We have to be able to create a user file, put users in it, and all that functionality will be in the main window. The main menu will have a selection for users, add, change, delete. So we have to get there in order to do that, and right now we're not there yet. So that's why I'm just leaving it that way. So we have a begin here, it matches that end. We have an end here, matches that begin. We have a begin here, it matches this end. All right. Okay. And when we get a successful logon, we set user ID and username. All right, and they're passed as variables in the public area of the form. Okay. Let's save what we've got changed here so far. And let's see if it will compile. Oh, I misspelled then. Okay, save that and Control F9. Compiled. So we have actually changed the way this works quite a bit. Let's run it and just see if it runs right. And I think to do that, we just do a Shift F9. Oh, we just do F9. Okay. That was fast. So now, John Smith won't work anymore, I hope. If it does, then I got a problem. And it used to be password. Tab. Well, it didn't log on. It didn't go to the next screen. Nope. Didn't work. But it didn't give me an error. Did it? I think I gotta fix something. F12. Okay. Oh. Here's where I need the else. Right here. Right here. And I can just take this code down here. Okay, so first of all, this won't have a semicolon after it because it's not the end of the if statement. And here I'll just copy this Do a Control C, come back up here, do a Control V. Nice how that automatically indented that for me, isn't it? Okay, that fixes that. Yeah. Okay, let's make sure that it's right. Control F9. Came up clean. Just hit F9. Okay. We can type anything in. Joe Doe and tab. There we go. Joe logon failed. All right. Now we're going to do backdoor. Oh, how do I clear that? Well, that's interesting. Yeah. So when I get this failed thing, I had to clear these. I had to clear these and set the focus back to the user ID. Okay, that's easy to change. All right. So when F12. Okay. That's going to be a begin now. So we're going to do several things. So this is begin. We're going to say, we're going to set that panel to logon failed. And then we're going to set the username and ID fields, which is what we did up here, right? We're going to do that down here. So Control C, Control V. I'm going to clear them. And now we want to move the cursor back to the Edit User ID box. And what you do to do that is you say Edit User ID dot set focus, I believe. Yes. All right. All right, I think that will fix that. Okay, let's do Control S to save it. And Control, let's do a Control F9 to make sure it compiles clean. Did. Let's do an F9. And now Joe Blow logon failed. Is it? No, my focus didn't get set. Why didn't it set focus? That didn't work. Why didn't it set the focus on that? Is that something I'm doing wrong? F12 to look at that. User ID set focus. Oh, I got to do a refresh. I think I have to do a refresh. See if that fixes it. Okay, F9. Okay, Joe Blow. Well, kind of worked. Kind of worked. Joe Blow. Logon failed. Okay. logon failed. If I hit tab, what happens? Tab. Okay, tab puts me back in there. All right. Well, it kind of works. Kind of works. Now we have to do, see, it hasn't cleared. Well, that's okay. I guess that kind of works. Okay, now if I type in backdoor, hit tab, yeah, it takes us to our application. The next step is in files, we're going to have a submenu or something that says setup. No, I guess we could just have we'll just have a selection that is users, and then from users you can add, change, and delete. That'll be for the next time. I think we're done for today. We've done quite a bit. I've bumbled my way through again. So we will close, and I will say, until we meet again, don't forget, if you like my content, click the like button, and if you want to see more of these when they come out, subscribe. Thank you very much. Have a good day.